camera on the screen.
Go ahead.
The camera in front of you is green. When it turns red, live.
Okay. All right, so welcome back everyone to another week, another episode of my show. I'm Jordan, and this is Taking a Different Perspective, where I talk, discuss, review, and analyze all things film and media. So you've already seen the title, you decided to click on this video, so you already know what it is, and I'm going to be talking about for today's episode. Season 2 of Dear White People premiered on Netflix on May 4th, and if you've been with me for a fairly decent amount of time, then you would know that when the first season premiered sometime last year, that I had dedicated an entire show to reviewing the first season. And so seeing as though we are creatures of habit, I thought that I would attempt to go ahead and make this a kind of a tradition to where I dedicate today's entire episode to reviewing season 2 of Dear White People. Now, seeing as though this entire episode, the entire 30 minutes will be dedicated to this series, this review will be getting into spoilers. Actually, will be like going into deep spoiler territory. So it says it in the title. I said it just then, and I'm going to say it one more time. This review of season 2 of Dear White People will be getting into spoilers. So if you have not seen season 2 and you don't want for things to be spoiled for you, then I suggest you click away from this video right now. Go ahead and watch season 2 whenever you're able to, and then come back to this review. So going ahead and jumping right into the review. So season 2 picks up right where we left off in season 1, give or take maybe like 2 or 3 weeks. And the reason as to why I say that is because when they reference back to Reggie's incident at the party, they said that it had happened about 3 weeks ago. So if you were wondering where I got those numbers from, that was where I got them from. And so everyone who was in season 1 is back for season 2 with some notable guest appearances and voice work from people like Tessa Thompson and Tyler J. Williams. Now, if you've seen the original Dear White People, then you would know that they were a part of the original movie. So, it was cool to see them come back and, to take on different characters in the series. Now, besides Tessa and Tyler, we also had Wendy Raquel Robinson that was in this season, Robert Curtis Brown, Telma Tompkins, Richard Grant, Loretta Devine, and Lena Waithe. Now, like I said, season 1 picks up right where season 2 picks up right where season 1 left off. I'm not really gonna go through a synopsis of what happened in season 1 because we all know what happened, and it's just gonna waste my time. But the series does continue with the kind of chapter story structure, where they focus on different characters for each episode, but still follow kind of serialized format to where there are these overarching stories that still pull everybody together, and that move the plot along. Now, with this second season, they do introduce more of a backstory to the college itself. So, that was something new for this season. Now, in terms of the topics that were dived into for this particular season, we looked at topics like online trolls, free speech, hoteps, abortion, PTSD, secret societies, gay identity, and or identity, period. And that's only to name a few. Each episode ranges in length to about 30 minutes, maybe give or take a couple of minutes, and there are 10 episodes that make up each and there are 10 episodes that make up this season. So the first thing that I'm going to start out with is Samantha White. So Sam is back in all of her overcompensated militant biracial glory. And for the second season, the main source of her conflict really revolves around an online Twitter troll who goes by the name of Alt Ivy. Now, Alt Ivy pretty much checks off all of the boxes for what we perceive and or expect an online Twitter troll to be in the year of 2018. Conservative, racist, and concerned about free speech. What we don't generally expect for them to be is gay and Latino, though, I mean, we have a Cheeto as president, so, anything can happen. Nothing really surprises me anymore. But that is exactly who it turned out to be. And that's exactly who Alt Ivy turned out to be in season 2, right? We found out that it was Silvio. And when that whole plot twist had happened, it was something that I had definitely not expected. Like, I really did not see it coming. I had watched this series twice. You know, the first time that I had watched it, it was, you know, just for entertainment purposes. And then the second time was more for review purposes. And so when I did watch it that second time, I was trying to pay more attention to the Alt Ivy character, you know, to see if there were, you know, these hints and things like that that I had missed that would have, you know, led me to believe that Sylvia was in fact Alt Ivy. Now, even though, you know, I did pick up on some hints, I thought that the hints were really subtle, like they weren't blaring to where, you know, if you're watching it for the first time, that you would think that it's Silvio. If you did, then I guess, you know, you're really observant and kudos to you. But like I said, I didn't, you know, I didn't know that it was Silvio when I had first watched it. But yeah, it was all unexpected. But when it comes to this Alt Ivy character, you know, he's a character who, you know, really is for a certain group of people, right? That he basically says what it is that they're feeling, much like what the man in office has done to you know, has done in real life, which is essentially to empower, you know, this group of people to be more open with their bigotry. Now, circling this back to Sam, she's the one that really bears the brunt of all of this, seeing as though she is the voice and face of Dear White People. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of her storyline this season actually revolves around online trolls. Now, when Alt Ivy's introduced us in the first episode, there's this montage of Sam going back and forth with Alt Ivy on Twitter. And I found that whole thing to be pretty humorous because of how real that whole exchange was. You know, I personally don't go back and forth with people on Twitter, especially trolls, but I know that there are a lot of people that do. And I have to say that when I see these exchanges, you know, more so under the comments of some tweet, I find them to be pretty comical. You know, the whole point of trolls is essentially to get some kind of reaction out of people. So when you give them that reaction, you're basically feeding into exactly what it is they want for you to do. You know, I understand that Twitter is a social media and that it's a place to converse with others and that, you know, you can respond to whomever you so please. But when going back and forth with not just trolls, but with each other, because, you know, Twitter is now like a cesspool for arguments. But, you know, when I see these exchanges happening, you know, I'm more often than not, I'm watching, I'm just like, why even feed into, you know, what it is that the other person is giving you? I mean, you know, I understand, you know, ego, pride, we're human, you know, we want to make ourselves heard and things like that. But at the same time, well, and I mean, like, I love to argue, right? So I get it. But at the same time, when you are going back and forth with people on social media, more specifically Twitter, you're going back and forth with people that really don't care about what it is that you have to say. Even if what it is that you're saying is rooted in complete facts, on social media, especially Twitter, it really does not matter. Now, granted, there are those exchanges that do end well, you know, where someone actually leaves the conversation learning something, or someone may apologize for taking something else out of context. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen all of the time. And so, you know, I definitely think that kind of ties back into something that I've talked about before, like this a problem that I think kind of, you know, characterizes our society, where, you know, people are going into conversations more so to just talk and to hear themselves talking to get their point across, instead of going to actually listen and to understand where it is that the other person is coming from. And so seeing that mirrored in the exchange between Samantha and Alt Ivy, I thought was pretty on the nose. You know, we got to see it go on for a lot longer than I could say at the very least I expected for it to. And then, you know, with the camera work, so the close-ups, the rapid cuts, and then the Dutch tilts. And Dutch tilts are just when the camera is angled. This season used a lot of them. But yeah, seeing all that, you know, added to the kind of neurotic and addicted and crazed feeling that was happening in that moment. Yeah, I thought that, like I said, it was because it was so real, I found it to be really comical. Now, even though I'm sure that it was a bit over exaggerated, but also, you know, that's the point of the show. You know, the show is really satirical, and one of the things that they were focusing on was online culture. So of course it would be a bit exaggerated and or parodied. Now moving on to another character, Reggie. So Reggie this season is dealing with PTSD that, like I said, stems from, you know, the party incident where the cop pulled his gun on him. Now, Reggie this season deals with this in one of three ways. It's through having lots of sex, therapy, and his newfound relationship with Dean Fairbanks, which, side note, let me just say that character development-wise, I would have to say that Dean Fairbanks is my favorite, just because I was not expecting the development of his character to go as far as it did. You know, here I was watching him in season 1 thinking that he's, you know, this sellout, this Uncle Tom that really doesn't care about, you know, what's actually happening on his campus. But you know, the writers, you know, they really allowed for, you know, other sides of his character to be showcased, and you know, I thought that was really nice. And you know, even though I liked seeing him take on that kind of father figure role toward Reggie, at the same time, right, we also know about his strained relationship with his own biological son. So while, you know, I'm happy that Reggie was able to find, you know, some kind of solace, I guess you could say, in his relationship with Dean Fairbanks, at the same time, it's like we know that Dean Fairbanks isn't necessarily given that kind of attention and care to his son, right? He's going for more kind of tough love approach. And so, you know, I definitely kind of feel for Troy in that respect. But the creator, Justin Simien, actually talked about with Reggie's character that his character this season was meant to showcase the collateral damage of a moment and how trauma lingers long after the headlines disappear. And his character was also meant to focus on mental health and show how beneficial therapy can be. Now, in terms of that whole collateral damage thing, I have to say that I do wish that they could have or would have explored and showcased you know, more of the effects of, you know, this incident, showcased more of his PTSD, because I did feel like after Reggie's episode that his problems just kind of disappear, even though we know that they don't disappear. And so, yeah, I do think that kind of ties back into you know, the chapter story structure that this show uses. You know, while I do like the idea of focusing on a certain character for a certain episode, I do think that it also comes as a bit of a disadvantage sometimes, you know, because there are those things that are explored with certain characters in their own episode that aren't really explored and or finished outside of it. So, you know, besides Reggie's character, looking at another character, Samantha, at the end of the very first episode, so at the end of Samantha's episode, right, when she finds out that there is now a podcast called Dear Right People, as she's getting ready to do her show, right, we can see all of the emotions on her face. She sits down and then the lights dim, but then we see this red backlight that you know, that sprouts up behind her, right? That's meant to showcase how furious and angry and just and hurt that she is that, you know, that there's a podcast like this that, you know, that feels you know, that feels strong enough, I guess you could say, to, you know, to be able to, you know, just, you know, say what it is that they want to say on the radio. And, you know, as we're watching this, we're getting amped up, right? Because we're like, okay, Samantha's gonna have like this epic rant that she's about to do, but then the episode just finishes, and it's not like the next time that we see Samantha that they pick up right where they left off, or that, you know, with her next episode that focuses strictly on her, that they pick up right where they left off and we get to see the monologue. And so, yeah, I felt like that was kind of a lost opportunity. You know, they had built it up and then they just kind of left us high and dry. So yeah, that whole kind of chapter story, structure, I think that, you know, like I said, while I do like it, I do also think that it has its disadvantages. Now, in terms of the whole, how Reggie's character is meant to show how beneficial therapy can be, now, from what I can remember, I don't think the therapy really ever actually helped Reggie. You know, from what I can remember, he found other avenues that were able to help him move past this PTSD that happened from the party. Now, besides that, the actual therapist, again, from what I can remember, didn't seem like the best therapist. Like, it seemed like his priorities were a bit out of order and that he really wasn't there to help Reggie actually move past this trauma. So yeah, if that really was the case, that Reggie's character was meant to show how beneficial therapy can be, I thought that they kind of dropped the ball, because like I said, the therapy didn't really seem to help him at all. Now, another character that I wanted to talk about is Joelle. You know, I love that we got to learn more about her. I love that she got her own episode this season, because I believe in season 1 she didn't have her own episode. It does suck that the man that she thought was, you know, the man of her dreams turned out to be a Hotep, but by the end of her episode, she ended up getting the man that she's been lusting and fiending after for however long, that being Reggie. So yeah, it was nice to see Reggie to, you know, finally stop faking on my girl. Now, Justin Simien talked about how so far in the series, there hasn't really been representation of a positive Black couple, and that Joelle and Reggie are meant to fill that void. And so I thought that that was cool, that, you know, that this was something that the writers and the showrunners had recognized and that they had attempted to actually fix that. And so what I'm guessing is that, you know, at the very least for season 3, that we can expect to, you know, see their relationship develop past, you know, just a sexual relationship. Now, besides that, I also love seeing Joelle's relationship dynamic with Coco. You know, we got to see a lot more of them interacting in season 9 when they both go back home with Sam after Sam finds out that her father passed away. And so even though I'm pretty sure that Samantha is the link between Coco and Joelle, I could be wrong, you know, someone correct me, but I think, you know, Sam is that link between them. Like I said, I would love to see them interacting more. You know, I love that kind of tit for tat, love-hate relationship thing that they have going on. And so hopefully in season 3, I don't know, maybe they can have, you know, their own kind of adventure, or I don't know, maybe they have a class together or something. I don't know, but I would love to see them interacting more. Now, speaking of Coco this season definitely goes through it. You know, she's still very much worried about her career and trying to remain neutral and making sure that, you know, things don't escalate on the campus. And also this season, she officially took over the core presidency away from Troy. But Troy himself kind of gave her a bit of parting gift, that being the gift of life. But, you know, so yeah, she ended up getting pregnant, but we know that, you know, she didn't keep it. She ended up getting an abortion. Now, going back to the whole chapter story structure disadvantage that I talked about with Reggie's character, I do think that it proved to be another disadvantage with Coco's storyline. And I say that because, you know, here she is dealing with the reality, potentially being a young, unwed, possibly college dropout mother. But outside of her episode, I felt like we really didn't get to see her grappling with that reality and the tough decisions that she had to make and then made. You know, granted, I do understand that Coco is also worried about some other things this season, but, you know, being pregnant and then getting abortion are two pretty big things for someone who is, I believe she said 20 years old, to go through. So yeah, I wish that we had got to see more of the effect of those things. So, you know, maybe at the very least, instead of, you know, having everything start and end you know, in her episode, maybe they could have let her storyline kind of bleed out into the rest of season 2 and maybe into season 3. But yeah, so hopefully we get to see more of the effect of that in season 3. Now, another thing that I want to talk about with Joelle's character revolves on the framing and composition. Now, in the beginning, we see her talking to her, in the beginning of her episode, we see her talking to her mother on the phone. But when we see her within the frame of a window, and I thought that framing her within that window when she's having that conversation was a great visual choice, because it really did give us a lot more insight into her relationship with her family, one in which we can infer that she's embarrassed by and that, you know, she tries to forget whenever she can. And that is only solidified when we see how when her white friend shows up, she immediately code switches, she hangs up the phone, and, you know, she goes back to being the Coco that we know her to be. And so, yeah, I thought that was a great visual choice. Now, besides that, the whole sleeping with Kurt storyline I found to be incredibly random. I didn't really understand why it was that they decided to show that. I mean, when I thought about it more, I landed on the conclusion of maybe, you know, she was using him, and I'm pretty sure she probably said that, but, you know, it wasn't really explored at all. Like they you know, we don't see any text messages, we don't see them talking or anything like that leading up to that point. So if that really was the case, then I wish that they had again explored that whole random storyline a bit more. Now Troy this season, Troy is a mess, but that's because Troy realizes that Troy really doesn't know who Troy is, and so, you know, this season he's definitely going through an identity crisis of sorts. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about his character. It's not that I didn't like his character, but yeah, it's just he's a mess and he's trying to get his life together. Now, in terms of Lionel, this is a big season for Lionel. You know, he's trying to unmask Alt Ivy, and he's also trying to uncover secret societies. Now, besides that, the creator, Justin Simien, said about Lionel's character and also about Reggie's character, how in season 1, they both have these moments where in most shows would have kind of been the end of their character. So looking more specifically at Lionel, right, with Lionel being gay, usually what we see when a character comes out is, you know, they come out and they're fine, right? So they're gay, everybody's excited, and then, you know, they have a boyfriend, and that's kind of it. You know, it's kind of like the development of their character kind of ceases, but we know that in real life that that's not the case, right? That, you know, it's the beginning of a much more complicated journey. And so besides Lionel tapping a lot into his journalistic side, we also seeing him tap more into, you know, just figuring out who he is, you know, within this newfound identity, right? So we see him trying to figure out where it is he fits within the gay community, which, side note, shout out to Kid Fury. You know, I love seeing people that I've been a fan of for a long time prospering the way that he is. So, you know, I love seeing him, you know, in Lionel's storyline. And then also with Lionel, you know, he's also trying to find love, and, you know, he thinks he found love, but then by the end of it, right, we see him questioning that whole relationship. So, you know, I'm really interested to see where it is that, you know, Lionel's character is going to go in season 2. He definitely feels like he takes a lot more L's than dubs, and we saw that at the very end that, you know, something that he had been, you know, going after for the entire season actually paid off. So yeah, I'm interested to see where his character goes in season 3. Now, Gabe, I thought that Gabe had the best episode. I thought, it was so simple yet so impactful. It happens within the single setting of the radio station. There isn't some big plot to distract from the conversation and the story at hand. And then I thought that the conversation between him and Sam was real. It felt honest and it felt vulnerable. And I believe that it shows something that I've already mentioned before, but in a much more beneficial and positive way. That being the power of two people being in a conversation long enough to where the truth is able to just kind of reveal itself. But, not just that, right? Having two people, that were willing to actually have that kind of meaningful and truthful conversation. A lot of times I say that, conversation or starting a dialogue with someone is one of the most important things that people can do. But if you don't have two people, or at least two people that are willing to actually be real within that conversation, then it really isn't going to go anywhere. But we see that Sam and Gabe, after a while, were willing to go there, and I like to see that. Now, in terms of the conversation itself, I love seeing Samantha being put in her place. I love seeing her being told about herself and, just showcasing her hypocrisy, right? So in the season, Gabe is working on a documentary called I Am Racist, and Sam, of course, does not like this. And so she agrees to be a part of his documentary solely to confront Gabe. And so one of the things that she says in confronting him is that, while he may be criticizing the system, he's still capitalizing off of it, and that there are other ways of speaking out that don't scream, "Look at me." And that's all pretty ironic, right? When you look at and understand Sam's character, right, you see that she's basically doing the same thing, as Gabe pointed out to her after she said that. Sam is a very flawed character in that way. She's this light-skinned biracial chick that was never really accepted by her white peers growing up. And so I guess you could say she became a kind of militarized caricature of herself, as a way of, just kind of overcompensating for her past. And so, when this was brought to her attention, when Gabe responded back to her after, Sam had said what she said, and, seeing how the only comeback that she had for that was a narcissistic one, I thought that was pretty telling. And it was a lovely moment to watch. Now, speaking of some other favorite moments or things that I liked with this season, I would have to say that the whole interaction between Ricky and Sam was my favorite moment this season. I mean, you want to talk about someone telling Samantha about herself? Ricky read her entire autobiography, all the while holding up a mirror right in front of her face. And if you actually pay attention to that scene, there is a point in time where, as Ricky is telling Samantha about herself, and all Samantha can do is just stand there and take it in. When we do see Ricky on the screen, I'm not going to say for the entire scene, but there is a point in time where when we see Ricky on screen, right, and you see the mirror that's positioned right next to her, if you look in the mirror, you can actually see Samantha in the mirror. And that was meant to represent how Ricky and Sam are essentially the same person, and that everything that she's been saying, that Ricky has been saying, is ringing true for Sam, and that it is making her second guess and really question, everything that she has built up until that point. And so, and then, we know it to be true because, after that whole interaction, she then tells Lionel that, that she doesn't want to do Dear White People anymore. And so Ricky was another person that struck one of Samantha's nerves. And so, I'm really interested to see how, that one interaction with Ricky is going to affect Samantha, in the later seasons. Now, another thing that I liked about this season was the history that we got. I enjoyed learning about the backstory of Winchester and the Armstrong Parker house. Justin Simien actually talked about how one of the things that characterizes the current zeitgeist, if you will, thanks in large part to the election, is people just trying to figure out what happened, right? And so that was another big theme within the second season, which is, these characters really trying to make sense out of all of the mess that has been going on, that has been happening on their campus. And I thought that really makes sense, that the writers would choose to provide all of the context that they did. And the reason as to why I say that is because, one of the things that I'm constantly saying and doing on this show whenever I do an episode that is more of a deep discussion of something, I always say that I first have to provide context or a bit of a history lesson for you all so that, we can understand what has happened in the past and how that led to where we are now, and how that can maybe, give us some insight as to how we should move or what will happen in the future. So I love that choice that they made to provide more history. Now, another thing that I loved about the season was seeing people come together, whether it was Samantha, Coco, and Joelle having their bonding moments in episode 9, or whether, it was the entire Black Caucus sitting in the audience at the Ricky show. It was just nice to see, all of these people who have been at odds with each other in the past, realizing that, that they're really not each other's true enemy, and that by coming together, they can really get, so much more accomplished. Now, speaking of that last episode, I thought that was another great episode. I felt like things were really starting to pick up. And then, when they left off in the way that they did, it was like, wait a minute, y'all can't leave off like that, because now, you know, things are really starting to get good. But they did, so it is what it is. Now, in terms of the Secret Society storyline, though I did find it to be interesting, I do think that it didn't necessarily come together in the way that I'm sure that the writers thought that it would. I don't want to say that I found it to be messy, but it was a bit messy. I felt like they could have tightened up that whole storyline just a little bit more. But we get to see with the ending of that storyline, and also with the ending of the season period, right? We see how they ended with the reveal of the narrator. So I guess now, you know, we can infer that he is also a part of the Black Elite Secret Society that, you know, was kind of teased throughout the season. Now, in terms of the reveal of the narrator, that was something that was kind of directed back to us, the audience, and it was really trying to, you know, like tell us or show us that, you know, instead of solely focusing on the message itself, that we should also really be thinking about where it is that these messages are coming from, who's saying them, and what their motivations could be, right? Because here we are thinking, you know, as we're watching him in season, or listening to him in season 1 and in season 2, we're thinking that he's this objective being that's just telling us things as they are. But then we find out that he's a human just like us, that is a part of the same society that we are a part of, with his own motivations for doing and saying the things that he does. So I thought that that was really interesting. Overall, I enjoyed the season, I have to say. You know, the visuals, great. Again, music, great. Again, the characters, some great, some, I don't know, I felt like the ball may have been dropped a little bit. The writing, I feel like some of it definitely hits right on, like, definitely hits things right on the nose. But there were other parts that I do think felt a bit forced. You know, I can see how some people, you know, could you know, listen to some of the jargon, you know, and think that it sounds a bit repetitive or maybe reductive or forced. But you know, one thing that we should remember, I think, or you know, and understand, is that, you know, that's kind of the point of the show. You know, it's called Dear White People, but it's really about being Black, and the fact that Blackness sometimes feels like a constant response to white people. Like, so like we're always having to, you know, explain ourselves. And so, yeah, so, I mean, you know, you can not like it, the writing I'm talking about, but, you know, if that was the intent, then that was the intent. You know, maybe they could have done something different, or maybe they could have done something a bit better. But, yeah, you know, if that was the purpose from the very beginning, and if it was something that you had picked up on, then, you know, maybe they are, you know, basically doing something right. So like I said, I enjoyed this season. You know, I hope that season 3 really kicks things up a notch. You know, season 2 ended on such a high note that it would suck if season 3 had the same feel, and I guess you could say pacing, as season 2 did. So yeah, I'm hoping that they really capitalize off of the intrigue that I'm sure a lot of people have for season 3 now, especially after that ending. And so yeah, I guess Dear White People, I would give it like a 1.5 or 1.25 thumbs up. It wasn't bad. Like, I'm definitely looking forward to season 3. I will be watching it when it comes out next year, and hopefully, you know, the following season. And so with that being said, that is the end of today's episode. You know, if you enjoyed today's episode, I've got some news for you. I do this thing every Tuesday, 12:30 to 1 every week. In terms of next week, so June and July, the movie calendar is pretty stacked. And so if I'm able to see, you know, if I'm able to see the movies that I want to see or would like to see within this next week, then next week will definitely be a review week. If not, hopefully I'm at the least able to see one of the movies, and maybe, I don't know, I'll talk about some news or something. I don't know. But I will be here next week. So yeah, 12:30 to 1 next Tuesday. Yeah, in terms of today's episode, if you had any comments, questions, or concerns about anything that I talked about regarding the season 2 of Dear White People, please hit me up on either Facebook at Jordan CHISLEY, or on Twitter at JORDI Reviews, and, you know, let's get some conversations going. But like I said, that's the end of today's episode, and I will see you all next week. All right, bye.